Generally, you won't be surprised to hear, Councillor Gowland, that my answer is no, I don't agree. I was absolutely delighted with the Prime Minister's change in approach. It's something I've been calling for over several years. So no, I don't think it will have a negative impact at all. In fact, I think the change in emphasis is really good news for Nottinghamshire. First, you mentioned the ban on petrol and diesel cars specifically, so let's touch on that one first. It's great news for the security of jobs and investment in the automotive industry in our area. We have one major car manufacturer nearby, that's Toyota, at Burniston, at Derby, who welcomed the change and welcomed the recognition that the future of car manufacturing and fuels isn't just electric, but it's broader than that. It's a whole range of potential options. I mentioned earlier that I was at the Hydrogen Summit at Toyota just last week as one example. Next closest to here and to our constituents, Jaguar Land Rover, backs the Prime Minister and says it's a pragmatic approach in line with what the rest of the world is doing. So as a region, the East Midlands, the whole Midlands in fact, the sector is supportive of the move. One senior auto industry executive was quoted in Financial Times as saying, some people will be cross in public, but the general view will be a collective sigh of relief from the industry. What needs to be recognised is that these are private businesses, right? And if they've made business plans to shift to fully electric vehicles by 2030, there's absolutely nothing stopping them from doing that. Fair play to them if they want to do that. Nissan, for example, have said they still plan to do it by 2030. Good for them. The Prime Minister's not telling them not to, or that they can't. It shouldn't be government's place, quite frankly, to tell private businesses what they can and can't make anyway, if I'm totally honest. But if they think there's a strong market there for electric vehicles and that's the way forward, then they can build and sell them, regardless of this announcement. What it has done is given a little bit more flexibility to the sector and recognised, as Toyota have said, that electric is not the only route forward in terms of the UK exploring clean fuels. Most importantly, it's brought our deadline in line with most of the rest of the world who have already set 2035 as their aim, or moved to 2035 before we did. And that's really important, not least for jobs in Derby, 2,500 people employed at the Toyota Burniston site, because if the market disappears for petrol and diesel cars in the UK in 2030, but is still active everywhere else in the world until 2035, then guess what? Manufacturers will go and make petrol and diesel cars everywhere else rather than here, and those jobs will be lost and our economy will suffer as a result. So quite the opposite, Councillor Gowland, to your suggestion. I think this announcement is really good news for the security of 2,500 jobs in our region and for Toyota's continued commitment and investment in creating more jobs and growth through that hydrogen research as well as other things. The other key bit, the second part of your question regarding clean and renewable energy, you're right that the County Council said this is important. It's what we want to see in terms of that growth of clean, green jobs, of clean energy in this and other sectors, like, for example, hydrogen at Toyota, at Chinook in Nottingham and Hymarnham. But not just hydrogen. There's a region we're into modular nuclear at Rolls-Royce. We're into fusion energy at West Burton. We're into clean fuels, again, Rolls-Royce, Toyota, East Midlands Airport, involved in that work. Aviation fuel in particular can make a huge difference, and a ton of research and expertise at the University of Nottingham in particular, with further expansion of the skills and training that's needed in that space, and more investment coming our way. I think the Prime Minister's announcement refocusing the national energy onto this stuff too, and there's a huge amount of national focus on fusion and hydrogen in particular that benefits our county in a big way. He's not backed away from any of that, and in fact he's embraced it even more in what he said, that Britain will focus on these things, on clean growth, on investment that creates jobs, boosts skills, focuses on tech and innovation to tackle these climate challenges, and not to get stuck on arbitrary deadlines on banning stuff like petrol cars that would cause prices on the second-hand market to rise and price people out of their ability to drive, on charging people more through Labour's ULEZ schemes or workplace parking levies, on forcing people to buy new boilers they can't afford. Many of my constituents still get coal allowance, never mind heat pumps, Chairman. They're struggling to get by. And so they have been concerned that government is expecting them to buy a new car, to buy a new boiler, fit a new heat pump, and all the rest when they can't afford it. And that's been a huge cause of stress that crosses my desk on a regular basis. They've had that pressure lifted, and all the evidence suggests that people are very happy with the Prime Minister's announcement. Since last week, the gap between Labour and Conservatives reduced by 8 points in the polls in the wake of those announcements. And it shows, I think, that the public overwhelmingly agree with what the Prime Minister has said, and so do I.